Rain poured like quiet sorrow over Manhattan as the heavy glass doors of the Everest Club closed behind the last guest. Chandeliers still shimmered, and the scent of jasmine and champagne lingered. But Amira stood alone near the marble staircase, her heels echoing against the cold floor as laughter from the ballroom dimmed behind her. Her eyes, rimmed with tears she refused to shed, stared down at her trembling hands. Just an hour ago, she'd walked into the engagement party of billionaire James Whittaker III, the man she loved, with hope in her heart and a small velvet box in her purse. Now, she stood humiliated, whispered about, and wrongly judged. James's mother, Victoria Whittaker, had made sure of that. Amira wasn't poor. She wasn't desperate. She hadn't fallen for James because of his wealth. But Victoria had stood tall in her custom silver gown, champagne flute in hand, and declared in front of 200 people, some women chase money. Some chase status. And some, like her, chase both. The ballroom had gone silent. James had stood frozen. And Amira? She had felt the breath leave her lungs. Amira Monroe was the daughter of civil rights lawyers. She was raised on the values of justice, humility, and perseverance. She had built her own tech firm from scratch, a company that provided low-cost education tools to underfunded schools across the country. But she never bragged. Her wardrobe was modest. Her presence, gentle. And perhaps, in the eyes of the elite, that meant she was less. She had met James in a bookstore. He wore a hoodie and glasses and smiled at her over a shared copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. They talked for hours. He didn't mention his last name. She didn't mention her company. Love, for once, was simple. But nothing about James's world was simple. Days turned to weeks. Dates turned to dreams. And when James finally confessed who he was, Amira didn't flinch. She loved him for his laughter, not his legacy. For his sincerity, not his surname. But his world didn't love her back. The night of the engagement party was supposed to be a celebration of love. Instead, it became a trial. Victoria called her a social climber. A gold digger. Guests murmured. Cameras clicked. And James hesitated. He didn't defend her. Not fast enough. Not loud enough. So Amira walked out. She didn't return to her apartment. Instead, she went to the only place she found clarity, her small non-profit office in the Bronx. There, amid files, books, and glowing screens, she wept. Not because she'd lost James. But because she'd lost her dignity in a room full of people who didn't know her. For 3 days, the media swirled with headlines. Mystery woman humiliates Whittaker dynasty. Gold digger or genius? Who is Amira Monroe? Old photos were dug up. Half-truths twisted. But Amira stayed quiet. Then came the email. An invitation. To speak at the International Women's Empowerment Summit. Keynote slot. Audience. World leaders, tech moguls, investors, and activists. Amira had been nominated months ago, and forgotten about it. But now, it seemed the universe was giving her a chance. 3 weeks later, she stood on a stage in Geneva. Dressed in a royal blue pantsuit, her curls free, her voice steady. She didn't talk about James. She didn't talk about the Whittakers. She talked about children. About access to education. About dignity. About growing up black in America and choosing compassion over bitterness. And then, she spoke of something no one expected. My company, she said, clicking to a slide, has quietly grown to a valuation of $940 million. As of this morning, we've finalized a partnership with 3 nations to provide free learning tools to over 10 million children. The room gasped. She smiled gently. To those who once looked at me and saw a woman chasing wealth, I was building it. The video of her speech went viral. Within days, she became the face of modern philanthropy. Women across the globe shared her words. Talk shows called. Investors offered partnerships. And somewhere in New York, Victoria Whitaker watched it all in stunned silence. James called. Once. Then again. And again. But Amira didn't answer. Not out of spite, but peace. She didn't need apologies from a man who stayed silent when it mattered. Weeks passed. Then came a letter. Handwritten. From Victoria. I was wrong, it said. I saw your humility as weakness. Your silence as manipulation. But it was strength. Dignity. You didn't need our name. We needed yours. Amira read it once. Then again. She smiled. 1 year later, she returned to the Everest Club, not as a guest, but as an honoree. The Foundation for Educational Equity was hosting a gala in her honor. And this time, cameras flashed for her achievements. Not assumptions. James was there, at the edge of the room. He watched her with eyes filled with regret and awe. But Amira walked past with grace. Because the girl they called a gold digger. She built a fortune not in dollars, but in lives changed. And in doing so, she reminded the world, that dignity, once questioned, can become the very crown that silences every doubt. And love? True love doesn't humiliate. It stands. It fights. It chooses you in front of the world.